Okay, today we're going to do a quick, and I mean really quick, presentation on Franklin Roosevelt, better known as FDR. So we've been talking about the Great Depression, and we know that the first president to deal with it, Herbert Hoover, kind of had this attitude that it would fix itself. The government didn't really need to step in. He didn't really talk much about it. He didn't do much to make the people feel comfortable or confident that they could break out of this economic depression. Then Roosevelt comes in. And Roosevelt is the exact opposite. He's got this very warm, understanding approach. The first thing he does is he gets on the radio. And he gets on the radio around 7 o'clock at night when all the families are listening and everyone gathers around. They call them fireside chats because people would get by the fireplace where they'd have the radio and they'd all listen to the president talk. Well, Franklin Roosevelt was really good at getting people's confidence up. He could make very complex things, he could take very complex things and make them sound very simple. He could put the Great Depression in terms that the people would understand. And his famous quote was, "You have nothing to fear but fear itself." So it was the whole fear of people putting their money back in the banks, afraid they would lose it, or putting it back in the stock market, afraid that they would lose it, that was really keeping us in the Great Depression. When he gets on the radio and starts talking to people, and he explains this, you have to start putting your money back in, have some confidence, or we'll never get out of it. People start feeling more comfortable, and they do start putting their money in the banks a little. You'll notice that Roosevelt was in a wheelchair. He actually had polio from the time he was 39, and it paralyzed him from the waist down. He really tried hard to downplay this. He was afraid that people would think he was weak. It's unfortunate that people just weren't as open-minded back then. So he had to kind of cover it up. He wore metal leg braces, and the media didn't really play it up either. Looking at the next slide, he was very good at surrounding himself with very smart people. He had a group of unofficial advisors called the Brain Trust. It was a lot of people he knew from Columbia University, Columbia being a very prestigious Ivy League school in New York City. Economists, political scientists, attorneys. Roosevelt didn't have all the answers to the Great Depression, but he knew how to find the people who did or who might have some answers. He'd call them up, he'd take all their ideas, put them together, then he'd meet with his regular cabinet, and that's how he made all these laws that were called part of the New Deal, which was his plan to deal with the Great Depression. In his cabinet, he put a bunch of different people in there. You don't really see this today. He put people who were from the North, from the South, were conservative, were liberal. He even appointed the first female cabinet member, Frances Perkins, as Secretary of Labor. He wanted a variety of different opinions so he could choose from the best one. He wanted to make the best choice, and he knew he could only do that if he had all the options on the table. Well, his first New Deal, the laws, as we're going to see in the next few days, they had a few general purposes. Number one, relief. We watched Cinderella Man. We saw what was happening. People were losing their electricity. They were losing their heat. They couldn't pay for these things anymore. They could barely afford to eat. Couldn't have food. Or very little. People were losing their houses because they couldn't pay for their apartments, their rent, or their mortgage. So times were tough, and people needed some relief from that. Because if you don't have some relief, eventually you could end up dying, and a lot of people were dying. There were a lot of casualties, really, of the Great Depression. So that would be the first goal of the New Deal laws. Second goal is recovery. Well, once we get people kind of back up on their feet so they're surviving again, then we have to figure out a way to fix the banks, and we have to fix the stock market. Pretty simple. This is a picture from Black Tuesday, which is the worst day in stock market history. That's the day the stock market crashed in 1929. These are the papers from all the people who were selling their stocks. A lot of stocks were sold that day for very little money because everyone was trying to get out while they still could. And then finally, reform. Once everything's back on its feet, you want to make sure this never happens again. So to make sure it never happened again, we had laws like the Glass-Steagall Act, which insured your money in the banks. You could put a certain amount of money in the bank, and if the bank shut down, the government guaranteed they would pay you money back. That way, people would never be afraid to put money in the banks again because they knew they wouldn't lose it. So you have to fix the problem to make sure it never happens again. And that's just a very basic overview of FDR and his goals for the New Deal.